Hi guys, it's Andy N. Thanks today for downloading or streaming yet another episode of Spoken Label. As you may or may not be aware, Spoken Label was started in the beginning of 2006 and currently we have well over 150 sessions recorded since then. Although you can find it on various networks, the full archive is available for streaming and downloading at Spoken Label bandcamp.com. It is a free download or free stream in there. But obviously, if you feel like chucking me a few pennies that way, it'd be eternally grateful to help me keep this podcast going and keep improving my equipment, etc. Enjoy. Speak to you soon. Bye bye. Spoken Label.
Again, Spoken Label back in the house on a lovely Easter Sunday as well. It's been glorious today. And we're on Zoom, of course, but quite local today because I've got a writer over in Steadybridge, and Steadybridge is very near to where I live. And I was talking to this lady because she got in touch with me relatively recently, and I did a feature with her on Sunday Tribune, not Sunday Tribune, Sunday Chronicle, I should say. My obviously arts magazine I write for, and we got that much good to chat. I want to talk to her today about her novel. So, Cat, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody? Tell them who you are. Obviously, where you originally come from, where you are now, and what started off your writing. We'll start there.
Yeah. So hi, I'm Cat Lumb. It's great to be on Spoken Label. Thanks for the invite, Andy. I'm originally from Huddersfield, so officially the wrong side of the hill, but currently live in Stalybridge. I started writing at a very young age, as a lot of writers say, but then I kind of stopped because I got very much into career mode in my 20s. And I was focused very much on the degree that I did, which was in Egyptology and anthropology. So I learned how to read ancient hieroglyphs and things like that.
Wow.
And then went into a museum career as a museum educator in Manchester, and absolutely loved it. But then I became quite ill. I got a viral infection that I never really recovered from. And I think a lot of people at the moment, with COVID going around with the idea of long COVID, that's basically what I got, but back in the day. So that was in 2008-9. And because I was so tired and I couldn't really leave the house, I was housebound for a number of months. The only thing that I could really do is use my imagination. And so I got back into writing through that. And because then I could only work part-time, for a long time I worked part-time and did my writing part-time as well. Until last year, in the midst of the pandemic, I decided to leave my museum educator job and take up my dream of being a writer full-time, along with starting a business as a writing coach, which has been so much fun.
Give him respect for this one straight away, because that's any writer that obviously goes to do the work full-time is taking a big gamble, and respect to you showing the courage to do it. But to go and do it in the middle of lockdown as well, that makes it even more courageous.
Yeah, it felt like an inevitable step, really, because I was very fortunate that the place where I worked asked for voluntary severance, and because I'd been there almost 13 years, it was quite a nice payout, should we say. So I've kind of got the luxury of knowing that I've got some savings sort of behind me. So it wasn't too scary, but it felt like the right thing to do at the right time.
Yeah, of course. I think you do. Sometimes you get some stages, some jobs like that. You're thinking if you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. Yeah, I know what you mean, that, because I think the way it's looking, my day job will probably end up doing what your job's going to do some point along the line in the future. And I've been at mine for quite some time now, so it's not a case of counting down the days to it, but you know what you mean. Sometimes it's what's right for you at the time. Now, we're going to talk about your writing in a minute, but I know, first of all, obviously, you've got a project at the moment called The Right Catalyst, haven't you? So tell people about that then, and where the idea for this came from.
So The Right Catalyst is my writing coach name, shall we say, and I help some new writers or writers who are struggling try and finish their novels or edit their books, be it fiction or non-fiction, because I found when I was struggling with my writing, and I was at that stage where I was producing quite a lot but not really finishing anything, You go through that whole mindset thing of you're not good enough, you're an imposter, and all of those things. One of the things I found really useful is I found a productivity coach, and that productivity coach basically changed my life because I found an amazing amount of confidence to be able to finish what I started. And that was one of the reasons why I first published my short story collection. And so I want to be able to do that for other writers. And obviously, with being a museum educator, I've done workshops for young people and things like that. So I do a monthly webinar on different writing topics, like how to keep motivated or look at story structure. I do workshops for literature festivals and things like that. And I also do some one-on-one coaching to keep people accountable and encourage them with their writing dreams. Because if I can do it, if I can set up my plotting shed in my garden and publish my books and get readers and great reviews, then I don't see why anyone else can't do it.
Yeah, it's excellent. Now tell people about the potting shed, first of all, because I think this is quite interesting what you do here. And I think it sums you up as a person, really, in a nice way, of course.
Yeah. So yes, the plotting shed is where I now do all of my writing and my writing work. It was something that we came to visit the house where we live on a viewing just over 3 years ago. It might be come up to 4 now, actually. And next door, the neighbour in the back garden had a potting shed. And we were stood in the back bedroom, and we were like, actually, this is the house for us. This is where we want to live. And it was one of those feelings you get when you go into a house. And my partner just looked and said, oh, he's got a potting shed. How about we build you a plotting shed? And a dream was born. And so when I left my job last year, I used some of the money to invest in that dream, and it was kind of a gift to say, this is going to happen. You're going to need this plotting shed. It was a demonstration of a belief that I could do it and that I will do it. So now I have my little plotting shed with some very expensive wallpaper in to make me feel wonderful. And I absolutely love going there every single day to do some work. And it's just such a cozy place. And obviously there's a dog bed for the dog to watch the squirrels as well.
I like it. Now, okay, when you set up the potting shed and you do your creative stuff in there, do you find then when you actually leave the potting shed to go back inside your house, do you find like sometimes you're still chomping at the heels to write when you're in home, or do you manage to shut down when you're back inside your house?
It's interesting because with being with having 2 chronic illnesses with ME and fibromyalgia, I've had to put a lot of boundaries in place. So I used to be able to be quite good at separating my work at the museum from my writing work at home. But when we started working from home in the pandemic, it demonstrated to me just how much the stress from like going to work really impacted me. And that was one of the reasons behind making the decision to leave, because I was so much healthier not having to go to work. With the plotting shed, it's a place where I can go, and my brain now knows it's like inviting my muse to step into the plotting shed, and that's where I spend time with her. So when I do leave the plotting shed and come back in the house, usually I'm able to leave it in the plotting shed. Of course, there are still those moments, in the shower, filling the dishwasher, all those things where you're like, oh, I must remember that, must note that down so I can pick it back up again. Because I think as writers, we never ever leave those moments of inspiration behind. And I do a lot of walking with the dog as well. So that's a lot of sort of ruminating time to think over plots and stories and things like that.
I know. When I go out walking a lot, I've always got a little notepad in the back of my pocket or inside my man bag. And you'll find me, I'll go out, and like I'm stood there a minute thinking, heck, where's the bench? I sit down, scribble this down, and you do it.
I found that the note app on my phone, but then now I've got one that records. So actually, you'll find me walking around the country park, sort of talking about how to kill a character into my phone.
Oh, you've got a great my partner, Amanda, because when Amanda was doing her last office-based job, she worked in the factory a bit back, and she's always telling me she wrote a novel, or the best part of a novel during the couple months she was there, going to work, from work, and doing it in the lunchtime as well. And it's like that was by writing on the phone. And I'm just an old-fashioned notepad guy.
Yeah, I do like notepad for sort of sketching out. Actually, one of the walls of the plotting shed is a blackboard, the whole wall. So I can literally plot my books on my plotting shed wall, and it's great.
That's brilliant. No, so I think it's the way you do it. I think there's no set wrong or right way when you're doing your writing like that. So I think a black and white said that board like that's brilliant. You just scribble ideas down there, look at them when you're writing, thinking, oh, that wouldn't work, that would work, and etc. So yeah. Now, we're here today to talk about your two books you brought on to date, and I know you've got other things in go, but we'll come on to that in a minute. Now, first of all, I want to talk about your short story book, which came out in 2018. Is it Memorial Tree and Other Short Stories?
Yeah, the Memorial Tree and Other Short Stories, yes.
Yeah.
So the Memorial Tree was a story that I entered into a competition at work, actually, and it came second in the Culture Shots writing competition. So it was, thank you, it was actually read out at the Manchester Eye Hospital by an actor, and also at the Manchester Museum as well. And there was something about that story that always stayed with me. And so the Memorial Tree starts with the title story, but the last story is actually the sequel to the Memorial Tree at the first one. So it's kind of bookended by these two stories. And I think one of the things about my writing is that I tend to always kill characters off. I don't know why that is. Probably better to do it in fiction than to do it in fact.
If it's facts, it'd be Return to Serial Killer. So
yeah, I'm going to say we'd be having this Zoom from a different location. But yeah, so I tend to always kill characters off, and it's one of the things that people always ask me. It's like, who have you killed now? So
I need to get you speaking to Amanda because I do an informal writing workshop, and she's known for either bringing zombies into all the pieces or killing people off quite graphically.
Well, mine aren't too graphic. Like, mine's very much, I mean, the short stories and usually the writing that I do is usually quite reflective, and nostalgia and things that are quite strong themes. Hence the Memorial Tree kind of sums that up. And I find it quite interesting to see how people and different characters respond to memory and how we remember people, and how actually we can remember people differently even though they're the same person, because we show different parts of our character to different people in different ways. And I've always found that really interesting.
Oh yeah, straight away. No, just this, I can get you around that straight away. You're looking at the way you look at things are completely different now. Now, in relation to that short story book, when you first devised it, was it always the plan to do the two pieces as bookends and other stories in the middle of it, or did it change over time?
It did actually change because I didn't have the final story to begin with when I started putting them together. So some of the stories have been published in places. So one of the ones called Spring Epithet is one that was actually published in a Women's Weekly magazine, which was one of my first published stories, which was actually, I think it came out in the Easter version. So I think it would have been 2015 that it came out as my first publication.
Wow. Brilliant.
So that was brilliant. And I think it was just after that I was thinking, well, I could put these stories into a collection and self-publish it. And it was something that the productivity coach that I mentioned earlier, she pushed me to do it. She was like, well, why can't you publish it yourself? Just get it out there. I was like, oh, okay. So I just did it. And I thought when I was putting the stories together, I was trying to find a flow, something that kind of, we start with the Memorial Tree and then where do we go from there? And I couldn't figure out which story to put at the end. So I was like, right, I need to write this other story, this sequel for it that I have in my mind. Because one of the lines in the Memorial Tree references, in the Memorial Tree, the story is this woman is planting a tree for a child that she's lost. And basically, this woman knows that one day someone will be planting a tree for her. So the end story is that story. And it's what happens in the interim, I guess. So it felt like I had to write that story to end the collection on. So I didn't have that when I first put the stories together.
Oh yeah, that's somewhere. I think always as books, sometimes I always believe it. It's great if you get a surprise if your plans change, you're developing it. I think it changes naturally, doesn't it? Straight away with that. So yeah, brilliant. Now, obviously, since then, recently you've brought out your debut novel, haven't you?
I have.
Now, I've been reading a bit of this this morning. It's very good as well. Now, did you find then that your approach to writing a novel was radically different to your short stories?
Yes. Short stories is something that I think I started writing very early on. And I love writing short stories because it's something that you can finish in one sitting. I'm a very impatient person. So writing a novel, I think the first time I wrote a novel, I think it took me 5 years of working on it before I even thought about sending it out to agents. And that one's still sat in a drawer somewhere, waiting for its debut. The spy thriller was actually one that came about by accident almost, because my writing group challenged me one day to write something outside of my usual genre. So I usually write commercial fiction. I wouldn't quite call it literary fiction, but like reading group fiction and things like that. So I was thinking, right, what can I write that's completely different? And spy thrillers seem to be that. So I started writing. I wrote this little bit about a woman who, it looks like she's been kidnapped, but actually she's been brought back into the spy world, and she gets taken to a warehouse to report to her superior, and her superior is shot basically by this naked assassin. This guy who's wearing only a trench coat, and I kind of finished it there. And so that was that little story. And my writing group were like, well, we need to know who he is. Why is he naked? What's going on? And I think it was probably the end of the summer when that happened. And one of the things that I do is every single year in November for National Novel Writing Month, I write a new novel. So I take an idea. So I take an idea and I test it with NaNoWriMo to see whether or not it has legs. And I thought, right, well, I'll try writing this spy thriller. It wasn't planned. I had no idea what was going to happen next. I didn't know who to trust myself when I wrote it. And I think that comes through the writing. A lot of people have come back to me who've read it, have said, oh, I couldn't put it down. I just needed to know. And I didn't see the surprises coming. And that's pretty much how I wrote it. So I think I wrote it 1 November. And then that was probably 2016 when I first wrote it.
Wow.
And then it sat in a drawer for so long. And yeah.
I've never had the guts to do that now, the National Poetry, National Novel Writing Month one. I do Napawino, National Poetry Writing Month every year. I do that one. And I effectively, the last couple of years, been writing books on them in a month, all kinds of weird things. But I've never tried a novel out yet, 60,000 words in a month. I couldn't do it.
I didn't think I could do it to begin with, but I think it does train you into that habit of sitting down every day and writing something. And I love the fact that because it's focusing on the number of words that you're writing, the actual quality of them doesn't matter. And let's face it, we all know that when we write the first draft of something, it's messy, it's not right. And I think there is for a lot of new writers, certainly with some of the clients that I work with as the right catalyst, that's one of the struggles that they have to get over. And so I found November the best way to get over that, just write completely. And freely. So I wrote that in 2016, and then I think when I left my job last year, I was like, right, I want to self-publish a novel, but I didn't feel like any of the commercial novels that I had I didn't think I could sell them as well because I don't think they're all finished. But with the spy thriller, it was something that was fun. It was a good adventure. I reread it and I was gripped myself. So I edited it and sent it out into the world and hoped people would enjoy it.
Yeah, you've had some excellent reviews on that so far as well. If people check it out on your actual Amazon page, it's been going down really, really well. So it's definitely worth people checking it out. And that's all I'm going to say there. I won't say any more there. But like I say, because it looks like there's going to be a lot of twists in it straight away. Now, I've got to ask you a couple of questions about this book, obviously. And we talked about this in pre-recording before. But I notice on the reviews, people are asking, aren't they, is there going to be a sequel? Now, I'll let you answer that, and then we'll go next.
Well, I think part of the reason why people love the character that I created in Liz Abbott, she's a 40-something ex-spy that's been out of the spy game for years and gets dragged back in. And it's how she copes with that change. And she is very much a heroine. And I really, really love her as a character. And it seems like other people do as well. So I will never say never for a sequel. I think there is another story to tell somewhere in that I think that, I've got some ideas of what could happen next for her. But currently in the short term, that's not the plan. The plan is to work on my commercial fiction and try and get an agent so I can go down the traditional publish route and hopefully earn enough money that I can write whatever I want, wherever I want. And maybe Liz Abbott will come back in that form.
Yeah, definitely. Now, people are wondering as well, obviously, if you go and look at the book online, you'll see it as Catherine Lumb. But obviously, your other name, your real name is Cat Lumb. So it's worth explaining to people the differences. I think why you're doing that, really, as we said before.
Yeah. So I published the spy thriller under Catherine Lumb, which is my full name, which is what my dad will tell you is my name. And actually, the spy thriller is dedicated to my dad because spy thrillers are something that he likes reading. So I published it under my full name because it's not a genre that I intend to continue writing in. If I do write a spy thriller again, it will be because of Liz Abbott, not another story. But my other writing, like we said about my short stories and potentially my commercial fiction novels, they've all got the same themes. They're all looking at things like nostalgia and memory and different sides of characters, which is very different from the spy thriller genre. So I wanted to separate sort of the two arms of my writing, I guess, out. So I will traditionally publish under Cat Lumb, but Catherine Lumb is for spy thrillers, I think.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It makes sense for that. It gives people a different direction. Like I said before, like people obviously know, like my name's Andy N and I do music and name Ocean the Buckle. Sometimes we think, I both agree, didn't we? It's best to give yourself that distance sometimes between some things. I agree with completely with that. Now, last question one is, and I've hinted at you before we start recording about this, what do you have planned next?
Oh, I think one of the things that I have trouble with is focusing on one plan because I tend to want to do all the things all of the time. But I'm currently re-editing a commercial fiction novel that is currently titled The Lies That Made Us. So again, with some of the lies, I tend to find lying quite interesting in novels. And I'm currently working on that so that I can send it out to another round of agents because I've sent it out once already. And didn't get any acceptances. So I'm re-editing it just to really tighten up the plot and the character arcs. And that novel is very much about a woman, Jess, who discovers that her boyfriend of 6 years has been cheating on her with her protege. And it's not only that he's been cheating, but everyone in their workplace has been lying to her because they've known about it. And it's about how she copes with that betrayal, but then also how she kind of runs away from that and how she deals with it. And yes, somebody does die in that novel.
I knew it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, to conclude then on this first part, Cat, if people want to find out more about you with all your various projects and stuff, where is it best going?
They're probably best going to my website, which is catlumb.com. It's currently going through a bit of a revamp, so hopefully most of the information is on there. But if anyone's on Facebook and wants some writing tips and encouragement, you can find me on there under the right catalyst as well.
I make a note of that. And obviously, we know I've been referred to your books, but on Amazon, so they can be easily found on Amazon. And you have done a feature very recent on the Sunday Tribune as well. Are you on Twitter and any other social media platforms?
I am on Twitter, yeah. So at cat_lumb for Twitter. Instagram I'm on, I don't post on it very much because I'm very bad at taking photographs that look good. Most of the photographs on my phone I think are my dog, so I think people are that interested. But yes, I'm very active on Twitter, so people can connect with me there as well.
Brilliant. Okie dokie then. Well, that's all my questions. So we'll let you go and take a deep breath, and I'll do the same. Your main stress is over now, so I'll let you do a bit of reading in part 2. So been brilliant today, Kat. Thank you for this. So
thank you.
Hang around, everybody. We'll see you in a minute.
Spoken Label.
Hi guys, yeah, I'm still here with Kat, and she's going to do a few bits for us now. Over to you, Kat.
Okay, so I've got two pieces to read for you today. The first one is from my short story collection, The Memorial Tree. It's a very short one. Some of the stories there are flash fiction, probably, but it's one of my favourites, and it's called Red Roses and Painted Nails. On their anniversary, he always bought her a dozen red roses. But each year they ended up in the stream behind their cottage, bobbing in the water like thorny life rafts. It wasn't that he forgot. It was simply a tradition he could not break. Red roses were meant for anniversaries. She had always preferred tulips anyway. Her nail polish collection was stashed beneath their bed, ordered neatly in their plastic boxes by colour and make. He used to joke about it at dinner parties, how she had enough polish to paint their house with, and then some. Other people would laugh. She would smile and nod, her head bowed in humour, but her eyes rolled back in derision. It was her thing. Every day she would have different coloured nails, sometimes even an effect or two that would make the girls in the office marvel over her skill. It was this that had drawn him to her in the first place. Her confident quirks made her stand out. He admired the delicate attention of her painted nails. It was what defined her, marked her out, made her desirable. He hadn't really known how much that desirability cost, both in terms of finance and space, until they had moved in together. She wanted the entire box room to display the tiny bottles of colour as if in a museum, but he had stood firm. Now he wondered what might have happened if he'd acquiesced. Still, each year on their anniversary, he would bring home the roses and place them on the table for her to find. Then, as was his custom, he would clamber up the poky stairs to their bedroom and choose a bottle from the collection. Slowly unscrewing the cap, he would savour the moment when the liquid broke the seal formed over in the intervening months, and he would breathe it in. The smell brought back so many memories. It was the aroma of who she was, who she had been. Sometimes a tear would work its way from his eye and stain his face at the overwhelming nostalgia of that smell. It built up inside of him until he could take it no longer, and he would close up the polish until next year, when he would choose another colour to mark this day. By the time he got downstairs, the roses would already be gone. He would follow the trail of torn petals and the occasional thorn-spiked blood droplet down the garden path and to the edge of the stream where she would be waiting. Every year, she tossed the roses into the rapid water, and as she did this, she would always be crying. "Who brought the roses?" she would ask. "I don't like roses. They remind me too much of my husband." She would break down then and crumple into his arms. "Oh, where is my husband? I thought he was home when I saw the roses, but he wasn't. He isn't here. Where is he?" He would remind himself of the tear already shed in his moment with the polish, and he would pull her close and breathe in her smell, the one that wasn't really hers because she no longer remembered that she ever painted her nails. "I'm here," he would whisper, but she wouldn't remember him. Still, he couldn't help but buy those roses.
Beautiful, beautiful
Thank
piece.
you.
Really,
I thought I'd
really
read you one in which someone didn't quite die, but yeah.
You're just trying to fox everybody there, basically.
Yeah, but yeah, I found it really interesting. One of my old bosses used to collect nail polish, and she kind of inspired that story. But yeah, that's kind of, you see the style that I go for with the Memorial Tree. It's very much about memory and nostalgia and how people deal with it, which is very different from the spy thriller that I write.
Yeah, which I'm looking forward to hearing next. I know you're doing a bit of that for this next, aren't you? So
Yeah.
So okay, do you want to set the context of this then? Obviously, because we're going to jump into a novel, aren't we? So
yes. So this is a very different style of writing, I think. As I said earlier, it was based on a writing sample from my writing group about the naked assassin. I'm not going to read that bit, which is usually the bit I read. I've decided to read something a little bit different that kind of fits in with today. So I'm going to read a little different part. But yeah, so this is the spy thriller, I guess. So what's happened is that our character Liz has been kidnapped from work to report to her superior because her spy alter has been reactivated. but she doesn't know what's going on. So she's escaped and she goes back to a farmhouse where she used to do some undercover work. And that's kind of that sets the context for her ex-lover, who she was undercover with, coming back to get her. So this is very early on in the novel, but it gives you some context. So I will read that. She could see the turn for the farmhouse on her right. The tall oak tree that marked the spot still stood next to it, with the leaves just beginning to turn autumnal. When she turned the car up the long sweeping driveway, loose stone crunched under the wheels, and it almost felt like coming home. The house was perched on the side of an incline, allowing her to view the entire structure along with the courtyard at the entrance. It looked empty. In fact, as she drew closer, she noted one of the windows on the upper floor was broken, and a tireless tractor stood on blocks next to the building. She pushed down the relaxed feeling that flooded over her. Reaching the courtyard, she slammed on the brakes, and a choked wheezing accompanied it. Liz thought for a second she'd damaged the car, until the sound repeated and she realised it was her. She clamped a hand over her mouth to try and prevent any further emotion from escaping, but it was all too much. The men in the warehouse, the shooting, Harley, and then the fact that she was back here at this farmhouse after so long. She covered her face and sobbed into her palms, letting the fear and confusion leak out of her. 10 years ago, this was the place he had brought to meet her mother. It was a surprising development, one that she hadn't predicted on account of the file the agency had memorized her made no mention that his mother was still alive, nor that he had a relationship with her. She was senile and part blind already, and believed her young boy was simply a businessman who travelled a lot. It was heartbreaking to watch as she fussed over him. It was the first time Liz had witnessed his tender side outside of their own relationship, which had shocked her enough given his background. But the way he was with his mother was kind, thoughtful, and caring. A whole other side to the man in the file that she hadn't expected. This was, of course, her first mistake, seeing him as a son instead of a criminal. But she made so many more over the 4 years she spent with him, observing, listening, gathering evidence. She let herself drop her guard at the farmhouse, playing the part of dutiful daughter-in-law as though they really were married and they had a real connection. That was her biggest mistake in the end, forgetting she was playing a role and falling for her own lies. After 2 minutes of painful reminiscing, she sniffed back any remaining tears, wiped her face, and checked the gun that she'd gotten from Harley. It was a tactic she'd perfected long ago, after the death of her parents, when she learned to hide her grief in private moments so she could be strong for Julie. Now the practical art of examining the gun calmed her. She wondered how long she had before whoever it was caught up to her. She didn't have time to panic anymore. She hadn't really had time for those 2 minutes, but ordinary life had changed her. She wasn't able to compartmentalize as well as she used to. Another example of how soft she'd become. Momentarily, she considered how the staff from the corporate office might think of her if they could see her now. Still the sharp, straight-laced PA who always made tea and remembered her colleagues' birthdays. It occurred to her that once again she had started to believe the cover she'd created for herself. Except, wasn't that supposed to be her real life away from the agency? She rolled her eyes. Those questions were for later. Feeling well armed with both Harley's gun and that of the naked stranger, she stepped out of the car and did a quick perimeter check, once again cursing her choice of footwear as they sank into the soft ground. The window boxes were on the sills, though their bouquets had long since perished. She was surprised to recognise the curtains still hanging in the front room, which were half closed. She peered inside. It was dark, but she could just make out an old sofa, the same flocked one that she used to lie out on, and the shelving in the alcoves. It seemed like the farmhouse had been abandoned ever since. A memory started to cloud her mind. No, she wasn't ready to think of that yet. She couldn't risk getting caught up in those times. It had taken her far too long to purge them from her system 6 years ago. She focused instead on getting into the house and setting up a defensive position. She doubted she had long before the enemy, if that's who they were, arrived. Trying the door, whose handle turned with a creak, she contemplated who might be after her and for what reason. She'd made a number of enemies during her time at the agency, but the majority of those were either dead or incapable of action. Why had she been recalled? Perhaps she hadn't. Perhaps this could all be an elaborate trap. Her thoughts meandered as she methodically checked the house room by room to ensure she was alone. Dust covered many of the surfaces. Some furniture was hidden beneath sheets that had yellowed over time. On a hunch, she eased open the door under the stairs. There, lined up neatly beneath a white wax jacket on a coat hook, were her old black boots. They were dusty, but still serviceable, and she kicked off the heels and pulled them on, grateful for the thick socks still stuffed inside them. An easy conclusion that the farmhouse had certainly been abandoned then, until she stepped into the kitchen. Then she had to reassess. The kitchen was spotless. Surfaces were clean, cookware sparkled on the hob, and a pot of daisies sat on the table, which was set for breakfast. Dry toast stacked neatly in a holder. Her stomach flipped. Her hand trembled, and she fumbled with the gun. The sound of it clattering against the tiled floor echoed around the building and made her jump. For a moment, everything went black, and all her limbs tingled with pins and needles. She blinked to try and convince herself that this was a dream, a recollection instead of a reality. But when her eyes opened, it was all still there, including the chessboard, placed carefully between the cutlery, pieces suspended mid-game. A note lay beside the board, and before Liz fainted with the weight of the knowledge of what must have happened, she saw only one word: checkmate.
What a tease at the end there.
So yeah, the original name for the novel was Checkmate, but we changed it along the way.
Yeah, like I said, I can sometimes it's best if you can change name, it changes naturally. But yeah, the way you finished that though, it's a great way of teasing him. What happens next?
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much how every chapter goes, I think.
So that's good writing, that then. Because quick question for you, if you finish the day, then is that, in your opinion, a good way of writing novels where you leave a tease at the end of it?
I think certainly for something like a spy thriller where you do want people to be on the edge of their seat, and you do want that unputdownable feeling, which I'm very grateful that the reviewers and the readers that have mentioned that it is unputdownable and they don't know who to trust, and they're kind of going on this journey with Liz about what's going on, what's happening. And I think we said in the pre-recorded that I was quite surprised by the fact that it ended up in the espionage thrillers bestseller list, number 16 when it was released.
Yes, I'm glad you reminded me of that. We should have mentioned that before.
Yeah.
Everyone listen now. Bear that in mind.
Yeah. So when it first, and I didn't expect it to do that well, to be honest. There are millions of books on Amazon, and to get into the best-selling list for espionage thrillers was something that I just didn't expect. So yeah, thank you to all the readers and the people who bought it. It's been a great journey.
Make sure you check her out, guys and girls. Well, thank you again today, Kat. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed this today.
Thank you.
So,
Me too.
guys, as Don Callis says, guys and girls, stay safe, stay over. We'll see you all soon.
Spoken Label.